Just because a guy can do it doesn't mean you can't do it. You can do whatever a guy can do. I think there will be instances where you are put down or you're overlooked or you're just spoken over, and it will happen consistently, and it's just a stereotype that exists, unfortunately. But it takes resilience to be in this field. Don't let that put you down. If this is what you want to do, you will find other women that you can support and who can support you. At the end of the day, the thief of joy is comparison. I'd stand by that. Don't compare yourself to anyone else around you. Nothing is a stupid question. If you constantly ask questions, if you constantly learn, if you don't care what other people think about you, you can do it. I think just going in with that mindset is important though. Lean on each other, support each other, and you'll be fine.
Hi, I'm Emma Zareen, your host and a 16-year-old engineering student, policy enthusiast, and hopeful future STEM school survivor. Welcome to She Persists. Before we dive in, I just want to take a second to say how grateful I am for each of you. Every listen and every bit of support genuinely means the world to me. When I started She Persists, it started as a little dream to share real stories of young girls in STEM who are challenging norms, finding their place, and inspiring change. Seeing that idea come to life has been so rewarding, and honestly, it's just the beginning. If you've been enjoying these conversations, I'd love for you to be a part of our community by following this podcast. It's one of the best ways to help us grow, share even more incredible stories, and connect with a wider audience. And I hope the conversation doesn't end here. I hope you carry these stories with you and let them be a constant reminder that your voice truly makes a difference. Today's episode is a really special one because for the first time ever, we're going international. I'm joined by 4 incredible women from Monash Motorsport at Monash University in Australia. A Formula SAE team that's pushing the boundaries of student engineering from aerodynamics and vehicle performance to electrical systems and autonomous racing technology. We talk about what it's really like to build a race car almost entirely from scratch, how they're developing one of Australia's leading driverless Formula student programs, and the countless hours of testing, coding, design, and collaboration that go into making a competition car perform at the highest level. So with that, let's get into it. Here are the women of Monash Motorsports. All right, well, hello guys. Welcome to the She Persists podcast. I'm so excited to have you guys with me today and just to hear about your journey and all the incredible things that you guys are doing on your team. So to start off, this is actually the first time I'm having an international guest on the podcast. So this is really exciting, but just as the first question, what is it like being a Formula SAE team in Australia? Is it like a big thing there? Do you guys have like a lot of motorsports and motor racing? Just kind of how is the culture of motorsports in Australia?
I can talk about it, but I think, growing up, obviously the motorsport culture is very male dominated. I don't really know much about it, but yeah. In Australia, I think particularly it's not as big as it is in other countries like the UK, but yeah. Yeah, I think it's comparing the Monash team's performance to the Formula teams that compete in Europe. The competition level is very different. Previously in 2024, when Monash did compete internationally, with sort of sitting in the middle range, so it's not as big here as Christina said, but it's definitely exists. It is still absolutely very much male dominated.
And in terms of what we do here, there are many teams, many FS teams that come from interstate, Melbourne, and even the odd Saudi Arabia or Japan. I think there was one year where the US came, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's cool to kind of think about how the sport is different in different places across the world, but that's really cool that you guys can compete with international teams. Kind of tying on to that, is there any team that you guys have a particular rivalry against or that you're always trying to beat, whether that be in Australia or international?
I don't think we have a particular team that we'd have a certain rivalry against. I think it's always about improving how we did previously. So kind of you could say our rival is ourselves. But that's an interesting way to put it. But it's just always we try to improve than we did before kind of thing. And I think that's just the general culture in Formula student across the world even. Yeah, right. It's even though we do compete and we have competitions and we're trying to win and get first place, the idea is that we're actually trying to learn and innovate. And yeah, there's often times that we collaborate with a lot of universities and other Formula student teams. And yeah, so and even during competition, sometimes things go wrong and then we borrow other people's equipment or they borrow ours. And sometimes when we have universities coming from outside of state, they sometimes stay at our university or use our facilities because they're not at home, need to do something last minute. So yeah, the culture is more so that it's very like learning and collaborative vibes, and yeah, not much rivalry really.
Yeah, I think that's great. Especially in a field like engineering, there's always need for collaboration and to work together with other teams. So I think I really like what you said that your rival is yourself, and just always improving and making your car better. So yeah, I love that. But I guess just a question for each of you guys: how did you first get into Formula SAE? Was this something that you always knew you wanted to join once you came to college, or how did you kind of find yourself in this club?
For me, I grew up a lot around the Grand Prix. Like my school is like next to the Melbourne circuit, so I had a lot of exposure to the Grand Prix. Obviously, like it was something that I really wanted to do since I was younger, like kind of coming into motorsports and all of that. So yeah, I guess it came from like when I was younger, and then like it was something I wanted to do in like university. Like when I came into Monash, like it was the first thing I approached, like looking at the team itself. And yeah, it was something that I just had a lot of exposure to when I was younger. So I wanted to continue that exposure onto my future.
I didn't have any exposure to anything motorsport related before uni. I think I did like a lot of competitions in high school, like STEM related competitions, and I knew that I liked competing. So when I came to uni, I was looking for whether it was a student team or something else that would allow me to like work on a project and then like compete at the end of the year. And there are a lot of student teams, but Monash Motorsport is definitely the biggest one. As an engineer, like the prospect of building a race car and racing it at the end of the year was just awesome. That's how I got involved.
I also wasn't like totally in the realm of motorsport um, before I went to uni. I started in a science degree, not totally in engineering, but I knew I always wanted to do engineering, so I moved into that. And then as a result, I was like, uh, with my passion for motorsport, when like discovering it during uni, I thought MS was the best option because I love that problem solving aspect where like at any one point, any one week, you're not doing the same thing. You're doing a different task that requires a different or even the same skill set where you're trying to put puzzle pieces together, which I really like.
Yeah, I'm very similar to Lillian Monagal. Did not like go around motorsport. None of my family or friends watched the F1 growing up. I honestly didn't get into the F1 until like a couple months after I joined the team, to be honest. But yeah, I was more interested in doing like hands-on engineering, where you like innovate and be creative. Because yeah, I definitely think engineering has a lot of creativity. And yeah, I was on another engineering student team at Monash before Monash Motorsport, and I also loved cars my whole life, but never really got to get involved just from, yeah, my background. I also went to a girls' school. So, yeah, liking cars was not popular, but also, like, even though I liked cars, there was no really avenue to explore that interest at all until I really joined motorsport and got exposure to other programs that can help me get more into motorsport. But yeah, for me, it was like the hands on aspect of it and the cars aspect that just, yeah, made me realize this is what I love and this is what I kind of want to do.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you guys all have like a common thread of wanting to problem solve and, just create new solutions and innovate. So that's really cool that you guys were all able to find like this avenue and find this new passion. What is one skill that you guys have learned on the team that doesn't necessarily have to do with engineering or really even anything STEM related, but just an unexpected skill that you learned?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I think one thing that I really learned is interpersonal skills, making sure that you're talking to people that are not in like the same department that you're in, because like especially when you join, the environment is so unfamiliar, and being able to just say hello, just like recognizing a face, something like that kind of builds that up. I feel kind of definitely fosters those interpersonal skills, but also friendships. That's something that I definitely take into account.
I think I've learned how to be okay with being outside of my own comfort zone. I think like coming into this team, there was like such a massive learning curve. And as someone who is put into a department with only men and like men who are studying mechanical engineering and as an electrical engineer in a mainly mechanical department, I had a bigger learning curve than others. And I think that like being in an environment that you're uncomfortable with is not a bad thing. It means you have so much opportunity for growth and so much opportunity to learn. And, once you come out of it, you sort of feel okay with going into those situations again. At the end of the day, we're all on the student team to learn and to better ourselves.
Yeah, I think those are both really great answers. A lot of the times, I think, especially in fields like engineering, we end up learning a lot outside of just STEM skills because engineering really is, like we were talking about earlier, it really is a collaborative field that needs a lot of people skills outside of just, like the technical expertise too. So, yeah, I think those are all really great answers. I'd love to get into each of your roles a little bit more individually now. Christina, if you don't mind, if we start with you.
Yeah, I think there's best. So I joined the team, but let's do it, as an aerodynamics engineer because I study aerospace engineering, so related to what I study. Last year, I kind of worked on my junior project, which was to design a rear wing. Yeah, that just involves a lot of design, surface design, and also doing a lot of CFD. CFD is just like simulation of how air flows around objects, and yeah, basically the aim of a rear wing is you want to have, to put it simply, have as much downforce as possible. And currently I'm working on wind tunnel validation, which is basically seeing how correct our simulation is to real life.
Awesome. So, aerodynamics is really one of those things where you can't just look at the car and figure out if it works correctly. So, how do you guys typically test your vehicle before competitions, etc., just to make sure that it's working and it follows all the simulations that you guys ran?
So the whole field of aerodynamic validation is pretty inaccessible, I would say. It also can be pretty expensive. So yeah, that's why we don't do it often, and we've kind of like revamped the aerodynamic validation process. But something that we do actually do frequently are track testing. So specifically for aerodynamic validation on track, what we had in the past is we put rakes on the car. Rakes are just like an array of probes, if you will, that can kind of capture the flow field. But yeah, so yeah, we haven't done much. We're hoping to do some more this year. But yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And, there's always room to innovate. So I think that's great that that's something that you guys are working towards. So can you tell me a little bit more about the computational fluid dynamics and the simulations that you guys run for the aerodynamics, since most of the testing is kind of based on the simulations?
Yeah. We simulate with the rolling road. That basically means like the car is kind of in a environment with like a road because there's interaction between the road and the wheels and like things like the under tray and the front wing. So yeah, that's like one kind of addition to the simulation model that we have to try and make it as like accurate as possible. Describe this. It's a lot. But what happens is as air flows around the car, every second it's kind of different. And to like actually get the values or the flow field over time is almost computationally impossible or like really long. So what we do is we take an average over a period of time. That's the simulations that we currently run. That's called RANS, which stands for Reynolds Average. Yeah. And then basically the important things that we get out of that is specifically the pressure contours out of our aerodynamic elements, such as the front wing, other elements like even like the side wing and the monocoque as well. And that just kind of informs us of how our current geometry is performing aerodynamically. And then we can kind of look at that and pretty much estimate new geometry changes. Like, for example, we might change a little bit of the curvature of like one element of the rear wing on the simulation again and just compare how the pressure fields look different, and see which performs more downfall. So that's kind of how we use our CFD to inform our aerodynamic design. We also do like a little bit of CFD development, which is not exactly what I'm currently working on, but that the aim of that is just to there's a few aims of that to like reduce simulation time and complexity, so that we're not waiting 3 days for a simulation to finish. And then the other is just making sure that our settings and parameters are as possible.
Yeah, that's awesome. And aerodynamics is such a crucial part of the vehicle, especially in something like motorsports. That's really cool that you guys are able to use those simulations to so closely replicate what happens in the real world. but what is something that you think might be unique to the aerodynamics sub-team that might not necessarily apply to other sub-teams? Maybe that's a technical skill or a way that you guys approach your design or really anything else.
Yeah, with aero design, we do a lot of like surface CADing. So the actual, like, I guess, CADing workflow is slightly different to like other departments. And we usually start with a very simple CAD. We don't have like overly refined details in the CAD, which would normally be useful for the rest of the team, like bolt holes and washing and things. In our initial like CAD, we kind of don't include any of that because that is unnecessary to run in our simulation. Yeah, so that's kind of different with the other departments. What do you guys think? Yeah, I think, I've noticed like the skill set for CADing is pretty different between teams, and also manufacturing a little bit as well. We have a bit more, I guess, experience doing manufacturing with composites. Obviously, the chassis department do as well. But we also kind of lack skills in things like soldering or like PCB design and other things like that. Or maybe like sometimes even FEA. Like so FEA is called finite element analysis, and it's basically, we do like basic FEA to determine how thick our laminates are, our carbon fiber laminates are that we use to make our grooming services and things like that.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you guys do a lot of technical things and CAD before the design, which is all really important to the engineering design process. But Liliana, I'd love to talk a little bit more about your role as a vehicle performance engineer. So could you start off by just telling me a little bit about your sub-team and kind of the work that you guys do?
Sure. So vehicle performance is sort of a combination, I guess, of your performance engineers, your data engineers, and your race engineers. So these are the guys, if you watch the F1, these are the guys that you'll see like in the pits with the headsets on, doing all the data, talking to the driver. That's that department. In Monash Motorsport, we have mechanical components, and we also have a lot of coding-based components. So things like designing the suspension is part of vehicle performance. And then we also have people who do simulations for the car, people who work on sensors, which is my particular role, and then people who work on the vehicle control. So that's like the code that runs on the car for particular events. So those are like our own individual like things that we work on in the background. And then vehicle performance is also responsible for setting up the car before testing. So that's changing like kind of like things like your camber, your tow, anything, changing the setup of your car depending on what particular event you're running. So we have setups that happen before we go out to testing. And then when the car is out of testing, if changes need to be made on the track, we do that. But most of that stuff happens in the workshop.
Yeah, that's awesome. So could you tell me a little bit more about the sensors that you were talking about that you work on? And kind of what do those do? What are the main sensors focused on and the importance of them on the vehicle?
Yeah. So sensors is divided between the electrical department and the vehicle performance department. That is new this year, actually. So the electrical department handles kind of wiring it into the car. My job is more health and redundancy checks. So making sure that we're checking for every possible failure the sensor could have. And if the sensor is failing, to sort of flag it so that we know not to trust the data that's running on it. If there are multiple sensors, we can check them against each other to make sure that they're both like outputting a reasonable rate. Yeah. And then in terms of the most important sensors, there are a couple of new ones this year. We basically use them for data collection. So each department has specific sensors that they want. The aero department has a pitot tube that detects like airspeed. The vehicle performance department cares a lot about tires. So we have like tire temperature sensors. And then the people who work in vehicle control in the vehicle performance department also like to have things like steering angle and there's things that measure the strain, the load on the car, so strain gauges as well. A lot of these sensors haven't been implemented fully or correctly in the past, so that's why it's been split amongst two departments this year to like ensure that it does happen properly because it's really important for data collection. But those are kind of the main things to do with sensors. That's a good question. A lot of the time, the sensors run once the car has sort of been already designed and manufactured. So what we'll do is we can use data from previous years to influence the design of the car in the future.
So you mentioned how you guys do work with data collection from the sensors. Do you remember any specific time or moment where the data that you've collected has maybe changed the way that you see a certain element of the car or the way that you guys might change a design in the future?
Yeah. Okay. So essentially, with all of the data analysis that happens, it happens obviously once the car is driving. So the manufacturer and design of the car is already set for the year. A lot of the data analysis is done instead to tell the drivers, like, where they're losing time, where they could step off the pedal, fully press the accelerator. Like, it's completely to how to best drive the car. In terms of how it influences the car's design for the following year, it just depends. Like I've said, a lot of our sensors have had a lot of issues previously, so the data is not fully, like, completely representative, I guess. But yeah, majority of the time, the data is not to validate the car's design. It's more so to validate any code going on the car, or to validate, I guess, to best support the drivers and how they can get the most time out of it as possible.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's obviously super important to be able to improve every single, what do you guys call it in motorsports? Would it be every single drive or every single round?
Every stint, yeah.
Every stint. Okay, cool. But so you're in a senior role. What has been the hardest or also the most enjoyable part of that transition? And how has your job on the team kind of shifted between the two roles that you've had?
So when we're in our junior year, we don't have a particular part that we work on. I think Christina mentioned we have like a junior project that we complete. And then for the rest of the year, we're just kind of like helping out with tasks around the workshop. So only when you enter your senior year do you get like an actual physical part. So this year was when I got the part of sensors. So it's a lot more independence, a lot more responsibility, because now we're working on things that actually will end up on the car. Yeah, we've just finished our recruitment for this year. We're meeting our juniors this afternoon, actually, in like 2 hours. So that's going to be really exciting, getting to help them, watch them go through the junior year that we all just went through. Except for Yeheni, who's now in her junior year again in a technical role. But yeah, I think, yeah, more responsibility, more like getting to specialize in what you're actually interested in, and then hopefully a bit more mentoring when we have our juniors. Yeah.
Yeah, so can you tell me a little bit more about that process on coming in your junior year, and what that was like, what the kinds of things you worked on, the mentorship that you had as well, just your experience on the team as a newcomer?
Yeah.
And that can go for all of you guys as well, so whoever wants to answer.
Yeah, I mean, the vehicle performance junior project is designing an anti-roll bar, so it's a mechanical project. Yeah, like I said before, I'm an electrical engineer, so the mechanical stuff was a really big learning curve. It's a group project, so you do get to like learn a lot and collaborate. And then when you're like leading up to competition, when you're finished your junior project and helping out, I was helping out with a lot of the code stuff because that's what I'm more comfortable with. Other people were like designing mounts for sensors, or just like helping out with manufacturing as well. We have a lot of machining jobs that need to be done right before competition as well. So a lot of the mechanical people like to help out with that. Yeah, outside of that, I think I just remember being really scared coming onto the team. Like when you're doing it like with no one that you know, and obviously in a really male dominated field, it's intimidating. But yeah, we've got a really good cohort of women. We've got a little women in MMS club. And we support each other. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's so incredibly important, especially in such a male-dominated setting, and for, everyone to really build each other up and just create, like, a community. I think that's really great that you guys have that there, and, like, what you mentioned earlier is getting outside of your comfort zone, coming in as an electrical engineer, and that's just so incredibly important to be, like, comfortable being uncomfortable, especially now you've found, like, this new place that you have a passion for. So, yeah, sometimes the best things just come from unexpected opportunities that you say yes to. So, yeah, I think that's really great. But for the rest of you guys, what were your junior projects in each of your sub teams, and kind of how did you approach that as a newcomer onto the team?
So I'm a part of the autonomous systems sub team at Monash Motorsport. So it's a bit removed. It's a bit different from the other departments where we focus on the driverless aspect. So in terms of my junior project, we were responsible for creating motion control and path planning stacks, and alongside designing a live box mount or LiDAR mount. Does include a bit of that CADing aspect, but now with the new round of recruits, we don't have that. However, in terms of more of the software side, understanding how to get the car to move and plan a path, kind of gave myself a good introduction on what goes on in autonomous systems, where we have a pipeline where we start off with our perception, our motion planning, and go down the line. It was really cool. I got to work with kind of different kind of like the autonomous simulation. So we have PackSim where we can see the car in our simulator driving across. So we can like change it after each stint and see our changes kind of in full effect, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. But so just out of curiosity, in Australia, is university, so are you a junior your first year of university? How does that
We
work?
go by like year numbers. So like
Yeah.
first year, second year,
Yeah.
third year.
Yeah. When we say senior, that applies to like on the team. So when you're like not necessarily your first year of university, but your first year on the team, you're a junior. And then any years after that, you're a senior.
Okay, interesting. I'll keep that in mind then. Monica, just to ask you a few more questions about the autonomous systems that you're on. So, Monash created Australia's first driverless Formula SAE car. What was the hardest part about building a system that, has to work without a driver, or maybe the biggest learning curve?
Yeah. So to give a bit of context, the kind of driverless pipeline came to fruition in 2017, where it was in its development stages. And the years after that was just like to work on research. And then I think when it came to 2022, 2023 is where we had our first kind of demo. And when it comes to creating an autonomous car, currently we have our M24, which is our integrated car, which is both driverless and driven. With that comes a lot of aspects with both, of course, software, but also integrating that hardware, making sure we have the right access points on the loom. We have our driverless hardware up to standard, and that we can run our code on our hardware. But also we rely on a lot of other departments to help us build that car. And without them, we don't have a driverless car. So in terms of that integration, we have a test bench where our vehicle interface part designers make sure we validate kind of our PCB state machine, which is where we can run the states of the car, particularly the autonomous states. We've got like AS driving, off, finished, ready, and that ties into our electronic braking system where we want to make sure that we're braking autonomously and that we're sending kind of the right inputs involved. In terms, yeah, that's more of like the electronic sides where we get a lot of help from ESIS. But in terms of the software side, we do a lot of bag testing. We do a lot of simulation testing. So bags are kind of just recorded data. So any previous testing sessions that we do, we record that using a script that we've made where we can see the car at the time. We can see the track at the time, looking backwards to earlier this year where we did a push test where we legitimately pushed the car, which was a great test of arm strength. We got to launch our pipeline. So our code base, we can see the point clouds, the LiDAR data, and we can see the tracks. And through there, we're able to get our cone data and our track data.
Yeah, I think that's so cool that you mentioned you guys have a car that's both driverless and can be driven. That's really, really cool that you guys are developing that kind of technology. But have you guys ever had like a technical problem that you've had to solve when it comes to actually making the car work autonomously?
Yeah. I think looking back on last year where we kind of had a rush, like a short deadline in terms of meeting our deliverables. I remember working on kind of a task where we had to implement a GPU to kind of increase processing times. That gave issues towards making sure that we integrate it into our code base properly, making sure we can compile and run it, and that kind of introduced DevOps issues at development operations where we're working with Docker, making sure that we're introducing the GPU properly. At points, it was difficult where we were close to kind of damaging certain hardware, but you didn't hear that from me. But no. And then when it came to like tuning, making sure that we can run our GPU on our perception pipeline properly, that gave way to a lot of tuning. So we struggled with making sure that we got the right parameters. So it was a lot of trial and error when it came to struggles with integrating. So trial and error, making sure that we have the right parameters, but also similar to what Lily mentioned, where certain missions, certain tracks, we have certain parameters. And the same thing goes with autonomous systems. So we've got, of course, our Excel, autocross, but we also have our track drive, which is 10 laps of an unknown track, which we perform at our AV demo at our yearly Formula student competition. And through that, there was a lot of challenges with making sure that we have the right, tuning parameters to make sure that we're not running straight into a line and making sure that we follow the curve of the track.
Yeah, so for the unknown track that you just mentioned, is the car just following that track like on its own autonomously without having like a predefined track before, like in the
Yeah.
software?
So
Oh,
yeah,
wow, that's really cool.
like unknown. So we make sure that once we get our cone data from perception, SLAM, so simultaneous localization and mapping, it can take that data. So it's an array of data, and it can like plot. It can read multiple frames think of it like as a camera frame. So you've got multiple camera frames, but we don't use cameras, but multiple LiDAR frames. And we match it up and we make sure that is there a cone at this particular point multiple times? If yes, we set it as a cone, and that stays on our track. And it does that iteratively as we follow the path where we have like our local frame, where we have like cones within a certain distance, and then our global frame, which is every cone on track. Sometimes we do get false positives. However, that is the job of both perception and SLAM to make sure that we're kind of filtering that up. And after SLAM gets all the cones, we also have our kind of vehicle kind of state estimation where we kind of we make sure our pipeline understands where the position of the car is in terms of the cones. And that gives enough data to our motion planner, our path planner, in order to create those kind of points. Currently, we use a few path planning algorithms, and again, dependent on your track that you're running on. So we have our Pure Pursuit and our Stanley controllers. In terms of Pure Pursuit, you have like a certain point in terms of your car, and then a look ahead distance, and then you have like a target point, and then you're finding like the best point between those. We also have Delaunay's, which is like creating triangles. So you've got like triangles around like 3 certain cones, and you find that midpoint between that particular triangle. And we also got centerline. That's what usually junior project teams start off with, where you legitimately create a midpoint between 2 certain cones. And then that data gets fed into our motion planner, where you have, again, your SAM and Pure Pursuit, and just like following those midpoints, following those path points. And that gives leeway to vehicle a VI department, where they take that data, encode on state machine. They take in a lot more of the electrical aspects, and ensure that of course, we have our hardware up to par, but we also use a bit of Motec, which is kind of like VT uses to a big extent, where we can have a direct look at particular parameters on the car. So our electronic braking system pressure, making sure that our CAN buses, so kind of the signal between our AS hardware alive and the state that we're in, making sure that we're not in a driving state when we're supposed to be finished.
Yeah, that's all so cool. And the fact that you guys are doing this for a Formula SAE car is really, really cool, especially in this like very groundbreaking, like new realm, even in industry. But for each of you guys, how did you get into your sub teams? Like, did you guys get to pick your sub teams, or did you guys go between multiple sub teams till you picked one? How did that kind of work for you guys?
The process when we all entered was you're recruited onto the team first, and then you do like part rotations. So you get to go through, well, each department hosts like a rotation where you get to go through and kind of get like a little taste of what they do. And then you put like your preferences in. And at the end of the day, it's kind of, they take your preferences into account and you're sort of like put into your department. But yeah, you get to try them out a little bit, like a tiny bit beforehand.
Okay, cool. And then so lastly, Yeheni, so you're doing electrical systems and business liaison at the same time. How did you end up in both of those categories?
Like I joined the team last year as a business liaison first, and during that time I had a lot of help with I helped in with a lot of the electrical systems. So For example, we have two departments, like subdivisions in the electrical systems department. We have electronics and e-powertrain. So electronics deals with the low voltage system of our car, and then e-powertrain is what deals with like the high voltage system. I helped out a lot with the low voltage system, so that includes the M25 wiring harness, which is basically the central nervous system of the car, if you say. It connects all the signals, the sensors, and basically anything electrical within like a wiring system kind of way, because it's the wiring harness. And then basically from that, it was a pathway for me to then join into the electrical systems department, which is now what I'm in currently as a junior. So I just finished my junior project and now I'm put in on a part, which is basically the car's accumulator, which is essentially the thing that drives the car. It's like the battery pack that basically drives the car through competition. So it's a pretty integral part. And I've been put in charge of it. So it's a little bit stressful, but it's like, it's a very good learning experience. And so, and on top of that, I'm also helping out in the business department as well. It's not like I've completely kind of shelved that or anything. Like I'm still helping out with sponsorship agreements, trying to help out with the juniors that are now in business, because I'm now a senior in business, but I'm a junior in electronics. So I have a bit of both. And I'm just helping out with the juniors as well. I can't really dedicate a lot of time to business as I would like, just because the technical department is very like, there's a lot to do in that one, especially considering that I am doing like the accumulator. So that's like the thing that again drives the car. So if there's no accumulator, no car. So yeah, it would be tough at some points, but I think it's a very rewarding experience overall.
Yeah, so did you always know that you had like this interest in working on the electrical sub team as well? Or did you come in kind of like wanting to stick with business and then find your way into the sub team?
I actually came in I was going to go to a technical role with business, but it wasn't going to be electrical. It was either going to be aerodynamics or chassis. And then I somehow ended up in electrical. I think it's like when you join the team, you have a very different outlook than when you actually spend a lot of time in the team. So when I first joined the team, I was like, yes, I want to go to aero, I want to go to chassis. But now as I settled more into the team, as I like put myself around a workshop a lot more, I actually like really started liking electronics and like the way the electrical systems, like they just worked. It also was a really big factor as to why I changed my specialization. So I went from mechatronics engineering to then fully electrical engineering as well. So yeah, the team has a lot of influence on you, I'd say, in like the decisions you make within yourself.
Yeah, and I think, I guess kind of connecting to that, like a lot of the times these student organizations or teams that college students are on, does really end up giving you a taste of like real world, how does, my degree work in that field, and ends up kind of shifting your perspective on what you might want to pursue in the future. So I think that's really cool that you were able to find that new interest through Monash. So yeah, but since your guys' vehicle is autonomous, I'm assuming it's also electric. Does your specific department for electrical work on anything specific for like electrification that you might not work on for a gas-powered car?
Yes, because obviously because it's an electric vehicle, a lot of the parts and stuff that power up the car are electrically powered up. In You've got two, as I said before, you have the low voltage and high voltage. So high voltage is about the powertrain of the car, so that's all electrically driven. So you have things like the accumulator, which is your essentially big battery pack that basically powers up the car, which then goes into your inverter, which turns on all your motors and stuff. The inverter then goes into then you've got like your HV distribution, so that's distributing all of that voltage across all of these parts, as well as BMS, which is basically the battery management system. Kind of just manages that your accumulator or anything just doesn't blow up, question mark, or like things that they just like work in hand together. And then you have your low voltage system. That's what deals with a lot of the signals and sensors that we have in our car. It's contributed with the wiring harness, autonomous systems as well. So it's a lot of integration with a lot of different departments as well. So as I was saying, with AS hardware, which is autonomous systems hardware, basically making sure the AS department has what they need to basically drive the car autonomously. Then you have a lot of other parts such as like your safety system, so making sure the car is safe. And it's just a lot of different parts that on the car that are integral for the car to be an EV car kind of thing. It's also, I think, in my opinion, like I think electrical systems is the department that all the other departments have to integrate with, so that the car is something that's integratable and has the most, can work, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, especially for an electric vehicle, that's so important. So, yeah, electrical failures can kind of really like make or break your competition day or your vehicle. What does your testing process look like before the car goes onto the track?
So we do, when we make a part electrically, we have to test it with things that we call test benching. Bench testing. So bench testing is when we take whatever part we have and we run a series of tests on it without it actually being integrated into the car itself, just to see that if we can identify any failure modes that we've already kind of thought about and any potential other failure modes that there are. After bench testing, we still do more bench testing just to make sure it's actually good for it. And then after that, we would also collaborate with other departments, have them do their own bench testing on the certain parts as well, make sure that they're happy with it. Then we'll do things like test fires and where the car's just sitting in the workshop on like stands where we actually test all of these components, making sure they work before we actually take this car and put it onto track. Because it's easier for us to like fix something or like see something has gone wrong when it's stationary rather than when it's running, and it could put other people as well at risk.
Adding on to that testing aspect, I think AS definitely does a lot of the test fires where we validate our missions, making sure that they run. We've set it up well. So we have an inspection mission, which is like your baseline, and then you've got your EBS test, so electronic braking system, which are similar, where it accelerates quickly. And then you've got your various missions. So we have autocross, where we see the car kind of steer, move, making sure that our autonomous actuation is working, that we're not oversteering, and that it's actually following the path. And that's something, again, that we can see on our simulation in real time when we're test firing.
Yeah, and obviously testing is so important, especially for departments like electrical and autonomous, where that really is kind of dependent on, or I guess for all subsystems, but especially for an electric vehicle, the electronics testing and making sure everything's powered correctly and functioning well is super important. So, but I guess going a little bit back into full group questions, motorsport is still a pretty male-dominated field. What has your experience as women been like on the team, and do you feel like things are changing?
I was one of the recruitment managers for this year. Looking at like the people who applied, it is still very, very male dominated. Very, very much so. I think it's actually quite worse than what you would think. And it's probably just due to a lack of exposure. Also, the idea of going into an environment that is one like this is just intimidating as like just in general. I think like once getting on the team and, once you meet everyone and begin to sort of make your network, it's a lot easier. Yeah. I would say that I hope that it continues to rise because it's a really great environment and a really great opportunity. There are lots of initiatives that are happening, like kind of not just within Monash Motorsport. I recently partook in the Girls on Track program, which is run by Motorsport Australia. It's a program for young girls all across Australia to sort of get into motorsport. We had like a placement at the OzGP and we got to interact with like other women in motorsport. So things like that, I think are making it a difference and improvement. And I think community is a really big aspect of it.
Yeah, that's so cool that you got to do that for the younger girls. I think especially being someone like as you guys are, being a woman in a male-dominated space, really taking that effort and that initiative to open it up to younger girls and other women is so important to just show them that, other people can do it too. So yeah, I think that's really great that you're doing that.
I think also like going back to like you spoke about your first question, a lot of people come into Monash Motorsport, specifically boys with that pre-existing interest and involvement in motorsport, which I feel like this year and last year it's kind of changed because now F1 has a lot more female fans. But yeah, there's a lot of like the culture, the personality of people who join and very like heavy car enthusiasts. So there's a little room for like variation in personality. But yeah, like I would say a lot of the women on the team like kind of bring that extra personality, which at times can make it feel like it's a bit hard to fit in, which is also just a more like wider engineering experience for women. Yeah, so just like navigating that, and also just like I think it's also cool to try to show that like you don't have to be like super like boyish or like wear baggy clothes and like not care about your appearance to like motorsport. Like yeah, I think it's like important to show that like this one personality doesn't fit
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that. I feel like that is really applicable to a lot of fields in STEM. I think a lot of the times girls kind of like feel like there's a stigma around being a female in a space and showing, like your girly side. But I think it's just so important to also realize that like, girls who are in the sport, if they're like someone who really likes to be like a very bubbly personality with like a lot of like bringing a lot of personality into the room that might be different from what most guys might interpret as normal in STEM or engineering or motorsports. And I think it's just really important for everyone to realize like that's okay. Like it's a good thing to bring in like that different perspective or that different personality. So yeah, I'm really glad that you mentioned that. And I think that's really important. But for each of you guys on competition day, what is each of your sub teams' worst case scenario and what does your prep look like going into that?
The biggest thing on competition day is probably the people that work on vehicle control. It's the code that runs on the car. So like, for example, one of the events at a competition is the acceleration event. So it's basically, it's driving as fast as you can in a straight line. And what gives teams the most edge over that is the way that your car distributes torque in those first few seconds. So the way that how much torque goes to your front and rear wheels and how it changes as the car moves. That is all code that is loaded onto the car, and that is done by the vehicle performance department. By this year we've got 3 people. Last year we had 1 person, which was not great. So yeah, if that doesn't work, it costs a lot of time because like the difference between teams are like tenths, hundredths of seconds. So yeah, I think that would be worst case for vehicle performance.
In terms of AS, fortunately, we were also able to run M24. So as our only driverless vehicle at Oscomp last year, I think we definitely struggled. I think it was a bit of a mix of the electrical side, making sure that our AS hardware wasn't broken. Unfortunately, there was something gone wrong that had to kind of push a quick fix. But aside from that, I think in terms of scrutineering, so a big part of Formula shooting is scrutineering, where we go through our checks. So we go through mechanical scrutes, EV scrutes, and autonomous scrutes. So that's something that an extra added layer that we had to go through, and something that we practice prior to competitions, and especially with autonomous scrutes, where we have to make sure that we're entering the right state. So we have kill switches, so 3 kill switches on the car, and we need to make sure that when we're killing it at any given point, that we're entering into our emergency. And the same goes with our startup sequence. So that's something that vehicle interface primarily kind of interfaces with, but our startup sequence. So going through the different stages of, do we have the right EBS pressures? Are we in the right AS driving or AS state? And things like that. And yeah, we've also got like our EBS test. So making sure that we brake, accelerating in a straight line, similar to acceleration, but making sure that we can excel at 40 Ks and then stop really quick without kind of the autonomous scrutes and the EBS test through our autonomous demo. Fortunately, we were able to, and another AV team was able to as well. And with that, we're able to launch. But there also comes complications with launching, and something that we didn't face, but a team did. But it's something that we do face in testing, where we're unable to launch. Either a node dies, so a node is something that we use to communicate to different parts of our code. Sometimes, the node dies, or some part of the code doesn't want to run, or there's a bug in the code. That's something that we don't want to see on competition day, but unfortunately does happen at times.
Okay, cool. So for aerodynamics, the failure modes are quite different because we don't have any moving parts except for the DRS, the drive reduction system. So yeah, if a point really fails, we're not really the car can still run. Our biggest, most critical failure will be if it breaks off in a crash or cone strut, which actually did happen at one of the track testing session last year. If that was to happen, obviously the immediate threat is that, if one side breaks off and it's still kind of dangling or scraping, is it going to cause further damage to the car or put the driver in danger? That's quite a critical failure point. But yeah, realistically, anything breaking off is kind of scary for us. And we usually would combat that by having spare parts, bringing spare parts to competition. We didn't do that for Oscom last year, but previously we usually bring pretty much an entire spare aerodynamic package so that we can replace something as needed, just like they do in F1 when there's like crashes and things like that. Yeah, and in terms of like if DRS fails, we will obviously be a lot slower on the straights in our biggest dynamic event, which was endurance. But yeah, and if we were to lose a front wing permanently, that would affect the car's balance. So the vehicle dynamics on track, and then yeah, just having complications in like the steering put.
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like all of your departments have very good plans in place for in case anything goes wrong, which is always important for engineering because things will inevitably go wrong, but being able to fix them is important. So, but does your team have any fun traditions or rituals for competition day?
Our competition is like, what, 4 days, 5 days? And it's been in Victoria, but this year it's South Australia. Yeah, so it's going to be an interesting change this year. Usually we like camp. I'm assuming we'll still be camping.
We camp.
Yeah, for those 5 days.
We hosted a barbecue for one of the other former student teams, UCM, so University of Canterbury.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. So going off on a different kind of direction, what's one thing in each of your sub teams that you guys are working on right now that you're excited about?
So 2 weeks ago, the aerodynamic department went to Adelaide to do full scale wind tunnel testing of the car. That basically just involves, so yeah, you don't know what a wind tunnel is. Just basically a room that inputs a controlled velocity of air. And we had a bunch of bespoke implementation, and also with the help of the data acquisition system of the actual wind tunnel facilities, we were able to get a whole bunch of data based on the different kind of test plans that we wanted. Yeah, we just obviously we did some different tests with the car in different yaws, so different angles and also different steers. So for example, simulating if the car is like turning, and then yeah, the different yaws are for when there are different crosswinds that the car experiences, because obviously that has a huge impact on the performance of the aerodynamic elements. So yeah, basically, yeah, we just came back from that entire program, and now we're kind of at like the stage of it. So yeah, that's one of my main responsibilities at the moment. So yeah, I'm super keen to like look at the data. We've already kind of consolidated some of the data and just kind of a sneak peek at it. But yeah, there's still a lot more work to do with like specifically data correction. So our data acquisition system still needs a little bit more calibrating and fine tuning to fully understand the errors and the measurements that we have. So yeah, keen to do that and keen to actually get the values from this wind tunnel testing, because that will really tell us how robust our CFD is and how our CFD results compare to, for example, wind tunnel data, which again is actually quite different to on-track testing. So yeah, it's still a step off from how confident we can say the aerodynamic package will perform on a track at a race, but it's still like a huge step for us. So yeah, keen to do that.
Yeah, that's really exciting. That seems like a really big step in the direction of testing and like validation in terms of aerodynamics. So that's really cool that you guys got to do that. And I wish you the best of luck in that data analysis part and seeing how everything works. But yeah, what about the rest of you guys?
I guess for AS, a really big thing happening is test bench validation. Last year we weren't able to run an integrated car, my autonomous car, on M25. That's why we had to use M24. But this year, this first part of the year is just focusing on let's get the car integrated. We were able to successfully complete our startup sequence. So that allows us to almost get into our AS ready, which means we're a step closer to getting the test bench fully validated and hopefully running our test 5 missions, which will allow us to run the car. Aside from that, actually, I will preface, there's been a lot of work from the women in our department in terms of test bench validation. Long nights, long days. It's been hectic. I think the test bench has been set up in the in the ESIS area, with a bench solely dedicated. There's always someone there working on it. But aside from that, we've been able to increase our perception range. So perception like the eyes of our car, where we were only able to see consistent cones within 10 meters. And further than that, we weren't able to see anything. But now we're able to increase our range, double that. If we're really feeling lucky, I think a few weeks ago, we were able to increase it to 50, 53. Which is really impressive. But I think further work is just going towards making that consistent.
Yeah, that sounds like a huge improvement from 10 to 50. Like, wow, that's a lot. Especially for an autonomous system when it comes to, like you were talking about earlier, unknown tracks, and just being able to kind of preconceive what that track might be like. That's super important and super cool that you're working on that.
I think in vehicle performance, specifically to do with sensors this year, we're setting up live telemetry, which is really, really exciting. So essentially it's just live, being able to see data on the car running live. Previously, you just wait for the car to finish, you like upload the logs, and then you take it back and analyze data afterwards, which is great. But if there's something that a driver is doing consistently that you can see happening on the track, you can tell them and they can fix it, and it speeds up the process so much more, especially when we have limited testing time. Like, we're just a uni student team. We get like testing grounds, like maybe like once a week. So when you are limited for time, it's really, really helpful. We'll also have like things like live flags running to tell us if sensors are not working so that we can fix it and get it up. So it's just a lot of making the process so much more efficient so that we can optimize the car the best way possible. And that's what vehicle performance is all about. It's about making the car perform as best as it can and optimizing it in every way possible.
Yeah, and I think that efficiency and optimization can sometimes be like overlooked sometimes, but it's so incredibly important, especially in like something like what you guys are doing, racing. Having that efficiency is really, really key to success. So yeah, that's really cool that you're working on that. For these next couple of questions, it's kind of like a rapid fire round. So don't like overthink it. Just give me your first thought. But what's your one tool that you couldn't live without?
Plexus. Plexus is just this epoxy based glue. Like, yeah.
A wire.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, if you had an unlimited budget, where would you put it? Or like what part of the car would you put it towards?
I want to slip a angle sensor. I want to slip a angle sensor to know how much the wheels are slipping. It helps the vehicle control so much. We get so much more time and performance. They're so expensive. It's not possible, but
You can tell I love PCs, but I would say a 4. So NVIDIA, they have a whole range of driverless PCs. The 4 is like $7,000.
Oh
So
my gosh.
I'd put it towards that. That gives us much more storage and much more computing power.
Absolutely a DPMS box. So DPMS stands for Differential Pressure Measurement System.
oh yes.
So I would love to just get like the top of the range, pressure management, which has minimal noise and minimal errors as well.
I think I wouldn't put towards a part. I put towards things that make up a part, because I think what makes our team very special is a lot of the things that we have on the car are custom built by students in the university. So I'd put towards getting funding for those parts and like
Oh, that's
being able
nice.
to perform at like the highest level that we can perform at in terms of financial stability.
Yeah, that's I love all of those answers. What is the best part of being on Monash Motorsport?
Culture. I think that I think the people that you work with, whether it's in your department or interdepartment, there's always a friendly face. It's a space, in my opinion, where there's no stupid question. Whether you're curious about an aerodynamic part or an e-system part or VP part, there's always someone that can answer it, and someone that can answer it with a smile. And that's something that I was like, every time working at the workshop, there's someone saying, hello, how are you? And it just makes it air.
I was gonna say innovating, but that sounds so vague. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like all engineers can kind of like relate to this, especially people on student teams. Sometimes you just have an idea, or you like want to improve something, and you kind of just like get so focused on it, and you like, what about this idea? Like, how can I make this work? And then the cool thing is, you actually can go and do it. It's pretty awesome.
just like the experience. I was going to say community, very similar to what you said, but like, yeah, I think the people that you meet, the experience of being on the team and like seeing a race car come together and then getting to race it at the end of the year is just like insane. While we're at uni studying, working, doing other things, it's busy, but it's a lot of fun. And I don't think there's any other experience like it out there.
I would say the knowledge and motivation. I think it's very admirable the way that a lot of people work hard on this team, and just like being able to see that is very much what drives me to also work to the same standard. Something that I've low-key go by is like, you can have a role model, but you should also strive to be a role model to others. That was kind of a bar. But like it's something that, you see a lot in the workshop. There's a lot of people I really admire in the workshop in terms of the way they kind of come in, work hard. And it's all about like that drive that they all have to kind of makes you want to have the same drive as well. So also like just the knowledge, like there's a lot of knowledge in the team that just gets transferred on as well.
Yeah, I love all of those answers. I feel like especially in a team environment, there's just so many different skills that people bring to the table. And being able to work in like that very interdisciplinary culture is, yeah, that's really cool. But as we're kind of getting into these last couple of questions, Monash competes against universities from all over the world and all over Australia as well. What do you want people to know about your team that they might not know from anywhere else?
I think Monash has a lot of, I think Yeheni kind of already said this, but a lot of our parts are like custom made by students. And I think that's what separates us from a lot of other different teams. It means there's a lot more opportunity for failure, but it means that it's also so much more unique. Like having a driverless car, like again, like the first university in Australia to have done that. Yeah, there's just a lot of knowledge that gets transferred around, and therefore a lot of our components and our car is, yeah, it's just very unique.
I think before I joined the team, and I think also from an outsider perspective, when you kind of look at like each iteration of the car, when you look at the monocoque and like the aero parts, they kind of look almost like they were not handmade or they were made by external sources. But I mean, now after having that experience and actually doing it, like, that's we actually made that with our hands, and it's pretty cool. Like, yeah, yeah,
Like just knowing that it's custom and then like, yeah, as Lily said, there's points you fail and everything, but at the end there's a successful product that's being made by students in a student kind of environment is what makes us kind of cool.
And I think it's definitely a lot to do with the resources that we have on hand. A lot of our like manufacturing that gets done on the team is really due to like the resources that we have on hand. So we have Makerspace, which is a hub for all student teams where we live, but we've got manufacturing machines, so CNC mills, lathes. We've also got access to any like high tech. So our sponsors, High Tech Metrology, and also Pearl, which we're able to use those resources and are thankfully on campus.
Yeah, I think those are all really, really great answers. I think that's so cool that you guys have fully like custom made parts. I think that definitely does make you guys really unique. And what's one thing about being a woman in Formula SAE that you would want other young women to hear?
Just because a guy can do it doesn't mean we can't do it. You can do whatever a guy can do.
I think like there will be like instances where you are put down or you're overlooked or you're just spoken over, and it will happen, and it will happen consistently, and it's just a stereotype that exists, unfortunately. But it takes resilience to be in this field. Don't let that put you down. If this is what you want to do, you will find other people, through other women that you can support and who can support you. At the end of the day, the thief of joy is comparison. I'd stand by that. Don't compare yourself to anyone else around you. Nothing is a stupid question. If you constantly ask questions, if you constantly learn, if you don't care what other people think about you, you can do it. I think just going in with that mindset is important though. Yeah, lean on each other, support each other, and you'll be fine.
Like on that point, like it's tough, it's hard, it's not going to be easy. It definitely wasn't for me. But like find your network, find your community, whether it's other women in motorsport or just people that you have a shared passion with. That's the first step to being comfortable, breaking down that barrier in motorsport especially. And I think, in my opinion, like your first foot in the door. I think Monash Motorsport and other Formula student teams is mainly most people's first exposure. I know for myself, it was like that first kind of foot in the door into what a career in motorsport could be, what careers can open up, and especially a woman in motorsport, a woman in STEM, where I don't see myself in some roles sometimes, but through this team, that has definitely been opened up where I can see myself in motorsport. I can see myself accomplishing this.
Yeah, I think those are all such great messages. And Liliana, what you said about like comparison being the thief of joy, that's like one of my favorite quotes ever. I think that's so, so true. And just like being able to realize that, like you guys said actually at the beginning of this episode, the only person you're competing against is really yourself in the past. And I think that's just such an important thing to remember, and that, you know, you can never, something that I live by is you can't compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 10. Like, if someone else is just at a different point in their journey than you, like, that's okay, and you're going to get there eventually, but just in your own pace. So I really love that message. But last question is, if you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Don't doubt yourself. Like, just because other people seem very smart, well-spoken, and confident doesn't mean that you're not. So, yeah.
I would say keep on being curious. Don't stop asking questions. Like that is the base to knowledge, base to complex learning.
I think I would want my other self to just to have more confidence. I think going into, and this is kind of what I said before, but going into not even Monash Motorsport, but just like engineering or STEM as a woman, you have to be not afraid to ask questions and not afraid to sound silly sometimes. Yeah. Don't worry about what other people think. Do what you want to do. That's what's going to make you happy at the end of the day. And that's really all that matters.
I'll tell my younger self just to keep going and not to give up.
I think a lot of people listening will also take that feedback and that advice to heart. So, Christina, Liliana, Yeheni, and Monica, thank you guys so much for being here with me today. The things you guys shared and the experiences you talked about are genuinely incredible. And the car that you're building and just the organization that you're part of just is really, really cool. And it's amazing that you guys are doing this kind of work in university. And I think a lot of girls who are listening will feel that way too and just be really inspired by the work that you guys are doing. And for everyone listening, if this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who you think needs to hear it too, and leave us a review on your favorite streaming platform. Thank you so much for tuning in to the She Persists podcast, and until next time, keep persisting. Once again, I'm your host, Emma Zareen, and thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of the She Persists podcast.